Today we've got a great malicious compliance story that results in a store getting shut down. We'll get to that in a bit, but first, when you have a front row seat to watching karma show up. Backstory, this happened about 15 years ago. I was an event manager for a venue space in several hotels. I worked for the hotels but ran the event space. When I started, the event venue was in the red. I pulled them back into the black in about 8 months. At month 11, the event space team hired a sales manager to help bring in additional business. The new sales manager, we'll call her Karen, would constantly double book pro bono events, causing my paying customers to have to move dates, or worse, move venues. This went on for a few months. Here's where the malicious compliance comes into play. At month 14, the owners of both properties decided to split their partnership, which meant my role was being eliminated. I was given a 2-week notice to wrap up any events I was working on. Well, the conference center owners didn't like countersigning contracts. They wanted the customer to sign, but they never countersigned unless it was requested by the customer's attorney. I didn't realize when I started how bad this was from a legal standpoint for the customer. So my last 2 weeks arrive, and I'm letting my customers know they won't be working with me anymore. I also went in and signed all the contracts I had open for the next 8 months and sent them to each of my customers. This way, if the venue tried anything, they had a signed contract, regardless if I still worked for them. I was employed with them and therefore signed on behalf of them. This is how it was explained to me from legal. Here's where karma comes into play. About 3 years after I left, a friend sent me an article about the business. After too many pro bono events for customers that never materialized, the company had to file for bankruptcy. They sold the property and wound up in debt. Karen did try her own event business. When that didn't work, she was hired back at the new venue space before being fired for not bringing in enough revenue. I don't know where she's at these days. We're not connected on LinkedIn anymore. She unconnected with me. It sure is nice when the business you're paying for services has at least one person that's willing to look out and make sure that you're not getting screwed over. I guess OP got away with it, but I don't know if the company would have wanted or authorized OP to sign such things. Also, hi, I'm Steven, and if you enjoy awesome stories of malicious compliance, why not hit that subscribe button down below? That said, our next story is, I can't have weekends off as promised? No problem. I'm a delivery driver that listens to a lot of Reddit content to muster on throughout the long days. Shout out to KCC and Storytime. And some fast food stories reminded me of this malicious compliance from my high school years. So I was but a wee lad in my junior year of high school when I got my first job at good old McDonald's, which happened to be the busiest one in my state. I was excited to start working and actually earn money to pay for gas and leisure for myself on the weekends. I had recently moved to another city close to where I grew up and where all of my friends lived. Still very close friends to this day. And I grew up privileged with a $100 monthly allowance for gas to drive to school and such. It wasn't enough to actually have fun on weekends considering gas prices due to the distance I had to drive to see my friends. That was when I decided a part-time job would solve my problems until I graduated and went to college. So I applied to McGranolds since they offered decent pay and flexible scheduling. Remember that part for later. My schedule when I started was 3 weeknights after school and Saturday or Sunday mornings. I worked this schedule for about a month and a half before I got sick of missing out on parties the night before I had to work the next day. It was draining me socially. I was working about 20-ish hours a week on top of school, so I was getting home late to do homework most nights and couldn't properly enjoy my weekends like I wanted to. I talked with my general manager and told them that I wouldn't be able to work weekends anymore, but I'm more than willing to work an extra weeknight to make up for it, and they agreed. This went fine for another 2 months, and I got good at the job and became one of their more reliable workers, since I was able to cover any position they needed me to. Then they decided to have a talk with me, informing me that I would have to start working weekends because they didn't have enough people in the morning rushes to be able to meet the McD's quota for service. I told them that I was told I wouldn't have to work weekends, since I traded Saturday or Sunday for an extra weekend shift. But they told me I would only work a few hours on some weeknights and would still be working the same amount of hours per week. I had no choice in the matter. I was pissed to say the least, until I remembered their policy for getting days off. As long as you asked for days off in their calendar book 2 weeks in advance, it was a guaranteed day off. You guys can see where this is going. I maliciously complied and asked for every weekend off for the next 4 months in the calendar book. Sure, my paycheck took a hit, but I didn't care. Time with the boys was more rewarding than an extra $45 a paycheck. It wasn't until 2.5 months later that I got pulled into the office, and my manager asked me why I asked for all the weekends off for those months. I told them that I had gotten the job because I was under the assumption that the scheduling was flexible, but I was told I had to work weekends. The manager looked absolutely defeated and tried to compromise for every other weekend. This was when I got another malicious thought in my head and said, okay, I guess if I had to. Cue Malicious Compliance Part 2. This time, instead of asking for every weekend off, I asked for every other weekend off. Another month went by before they started scheduling me for weekdays only, but with slightly longer weeknight shifts like I wanted. I only got away with this because turnover rates were high, and I was able to work any position like I said, so I knew there was no way they were gonna fire me. I have many more stories from that place, and I just thought of another while typing this that I might post in pro-revenge. Thanks for reading, and please be kind to service workers. I definitely feel bad for people who work in this line of work because they kind of get it both ways a lot of times. Obviously, you're gonna deal with awful customers in service work, especially at a place like McDonald's. It just kind of comes with the territory. But also, management, let's be real, doesn't really care that much. Like, they're probably going to see you as a replaceable thing. Honestly, I'm almost impressed that OP was able to get away with requesting off so long without them just being like, you know what, we need somebody who can work weekends, you're fired. Our next story is, need to base mileage report on office address instead of my home? You're lost then. I work from home most of the time. Recently, I had to file an expense report for mileage since I drove my vehicle to a specific location for work. I had previously calculated my mileage using the location I actually left from to get to the location I'm going to. This was usually my home to whatever venue I'm going to for work. I assumed that this was the way that made the most sense. This particular event was less than 20 miles from where I live, so I submitted the mileage for my home address as that's where I left from. My expense report was then sent back to me, stating it needed to be amended. The message read something like, per company policy, mileage must be calculated as if you were going from the office and not your home address. Please adjust accordingly and resubmit. I think to myself, well, that's dumb. Move on and resubmit as though I'm leaving from my work address. Turns out, the office is a little more than double the distance to the location I went to compared to the actual distance I traveled leaving from my house. So the company policy made what would have been a $30 reimbursement a $60 reimbursement. Sucks for them. Guess that's what you get for having a blanket policy that needs to be followed no matter what. I could imagine whoever made this policy in their mind assumed that this would somehow make it better for the company. Or like standardize it. Little did they realize it might make a lot of sense to have this policy because it might save them a good amount of money. This next story is, I'd tell you to screw yourself, but I don't think you know how. Not quite malicious, but the fallout was intense. Me, a 19-year-old at the time, Laura, general manager and both the sweetest woman and the best boss I've ever worked for, Ted, manager, the arrogance of White Goodman and the witchy attitude of Lewis Litt. Once upon a time, I used to work for a small chain of diners known for their golden arches. I got hired shortly after graduating high school and had worked there for almost a year when Laura announced to our crew that Ted had been promoted to assistant GM. This made several people upset because Ted would go on to use his new authority to exchange favors for raises. A few weeks after Ted's promotion, I woke up on a Saturday feeling 50 shades of terrible. But I got up and did my morning ritual before work. When I went into the bathroom to brush my teeth, I saw that my face and neck were physically green, like Vlasic pickle green. But being 19 and terrified of disappointing management, I finished, got dressed, and went to work. I punch in and head back to wash my hands, and Laura is the first to say hi. She said, "Morning, OP. Baby, what is wrong with you?" I said, "I don't know, ma'am. All I know is I feel terrible." She said, "Baby, why didn't you call me?" I said I didn't want to let you down. She said, "Honey, you're sick. Something's really the matter with you." Laura pulled out her phone and called the nearest urgent care. She said, "Hello, I need to schedule your nearest appointment for one of my people. His name is OP. What's your birthday, baby? Now your address." "Thank you, ma'am. He'll be right over." I said, "Miss Laura, I can't afford a doctor visit right now." She said, "Don't you worry about that, honey. I'm gonna take care of it for you." After a thorough exam and some blood work, the doctor prescribes me a trio of antibiotics and 4 days bed rest. Can't remember what I had, sorry, so I call my store to speak to Laura after leaving urgent care. So the doctor gave me medicine and I'm supposed to take 4 days off. She said, "Okay, baby, I'm gonna double that for you and don't you worry, I'll make sure that you get paid for all of it." A few hours later, I'm laying in bed watching TV and my phone rings. I say, "Hello?" They say, "Yeah, OP, where the heck are you?" I said, "Is there a problem?" They say, "You can say that. We're an hour into dinner and your butt is nowhere to be seen." I said, "Did you talk to Laura?" Ted says, "What the freak does she have to do with you not being here?" I said, "Did you talk to Laura?" They say, "I don't need to talk to Laura. Listen, if you're not on the clock within the hour, I suggest you start looking for other employment." So I did. I got dressed again, went to work just like Ted told me, and clocked in. And wouldn't you know it, Laura was the first person to see me. She said, "Baby, what are you doing here? I thought you were home resting." I said I was, but Ted called me a bit ago and told me either I come in or I'm fired. She said, "Did you tell him to talk to me?" I said yes, and he said he didn't need to. She said, "Is that so? Ted, come back here, please." Ted says, "I'm in the middle of getting my crap mixed. What the freak is wrong with your face?" I said, "You should have talked to Laura." Laura says, "Ted, OP is going home and he's gonna be home for another 7 days. I don't want to hear a word from you about this, understand?" Ted says, "Right." The day before I was supposed to go back to work, I got a call telling me I needed to report to Franchise HQ for a meeting with owner, HR, and Ted. When I got there, I spoke to franchise owner, who informed me that Laura was so enraged by Ted's statement that he didn't need to talk to her about my condition that she called HQ and told him everything. I was then subjected to the weakest apology ever delivered by a member of the human race. After what I gathered was a very serious conversation, Ted had agreed to transfer to the franchise's least profitable store, but not until he'd apologized to me for threatening my job. A few months after Ted's transfer, we were informed that his store folded due to a lack of positive leadership. Apparently, his new employees were less than thrilled to have a womanizer for a boss. Last I heard of Ted, he was a detailer for a local cab company. Laura, however, was promoted to regional manager for the way she'd looked after her employees. They figured she could teach that to the other GMs. We're still good friends to this day. I know this is working at McDonald's, but Laura is the kind of manager that you work under that you would run through the wall for. I'd just about jump into the deep fryer for her. Our next story is, oh, I can quit? Not without the final say I can't. At my last job, my boss, let's call her Kay, hated me. She turned everything into a competition. She mocked me publicly, she took credit for my work, she divulged my personal medical information in front of all of our coworkers. She was cruel, and needless to say, I avoided her as much as I could. So now that the stage is set, here's the context. End of 2020, coronavirus blazing, I had just had my first baby. I was a nervous wreck my entire pregnancy, working from home and being extra careful. After maternity leave, which was disgustingly short by the way, I had returned to the office with some precautions set in place. My boss became crueler to me over those first few weeks back, and suddenly announced that, regardless of any negative feelings toward it, she had decided we all had to attend this training in another state. Keep in mind, there were mandatory 2-week at-home quarantines in place for anyone coming back to my state. But my boss fully planned on ignoring those quarantines and demanding we all would return to the office as soon as we got back. I was carrying a heavy workload and pulling a lot of the weight around the office, and I had some rank. So I felt fully comfortable expressing my deep concerns to Kay, telling her that it was peak COVID season and that I had a newborn to worry about now. I expressed I simply didn't feel comfortable going in the middle of a global pandemic and asked if there was a remote training I could attend instead. She firmly, adamantly insisted that there was no remote training and informed me that I could quit if I was that upset with her decisions. It's important to note that she insisted this for weeks, even claiming to have contacted the training organization to make sure. I decided on the spot after that meeting that I would be quitting, but I needed to check my boxes first, which took me a few weeks to figure out. Sometime after this meeting and her incessant insistence that there was no remote training, it finally occurred to me to check with the organization putting on the training and ask them to clarify if there truly was a remote training or not. I did, and lo and behold, there was, and they'd been offering it for months. I asked them to email this information to me. Now, to figure out how to use this valuable information, right? Wrong. As soon as I stepped back into the office, Kay starts fake empathizing with me out of nowhere in front of all of our coworkers, saying she really wished she didn't need to force me to go to this training. So I said, if you feel so bad, let me go to the remote training. She looked at me in surprise and her face turned beet red. Before she could fight me, I pulled up the email with the information and read it aloud in front of all of our coworkers. No one said anything. They just stared wide-eyed at her while she blubbered like a fool. Long story short, after pulling that fast one on her, I pulled her into a private meeting and gave my notice. She was horrified because, as I stated prior, I carried a lot of the work around that office. But, like she said, I could quit if I didn't like her decisions. Did she get like some kind of personal kickback or something if they were going out of state? Did she just want the company to do bad? Did she just want a feeling of power? I don't know. But with that being said, that's all the time we have for today. Now, if you want to hear another awesome malicious compliance story, check out that video on the left. Or if you missed my latest video, check out that video on the right. That said, I'll see you all next time with some more stories.